So anyway, this is an interesting and scary week for those of you who are gamers out there. CD Projekt Red is a big name in the industry, and they've had big launch late last year of Cyberpunk. And it looks like, unfortunately, to add on top of that, and some of their notoriety as an organization, that they've now come under attack from ransomware, which is awful. And this is a developing kind of breaking story. We're just learning about it. I think the first reports of it came out on Monday or Tuesday, and we're still learning about it to kind of figure out what's been happening as it unfolds. The background that we have so far on it is that I believe that the malware group or the ransomware is called Hello Kitty, based off of the popular Japanese character. So the group has targeted them, and in this case, it looks like they've encrypted their data. But not only encrypted their data, they've also exfiltrated a lot of source code for their various different properties. So I think all of the Witcher games and the Witcher-related games like Gwent, I think it was, and CD Projekt Red, the source code has gone out the door for all of these things. And we're seeing this more and more. And Ryan, I know you and I have talked about it a couple times, and for better or worse, I think we used the Cyber Threats 2021 on a previous episode, so we missed that one. But we've seen this type of double dipping, double whammy situation where the ransomware is just one part of the extortion tactic, so knocking them offline, but also holding their source code for ransom, or their intellectual property for ransom. But why do you think that this is happening in this way so much now? Just kind of generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, especially in a scenario like this, their data is their business, right? This
Yeah.
is their intellectual property. This is their product, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And we're starting to see a bit of a shift in the ransomware game here, as opposed to the old days. It was ransomware for the sake of ransomware to try
Right.
to make money and monetize that. Now you mentioned the double whammy, the double hit in this case. They've already gotten in, they've already gotten their hands on data. That's what they came for. They got the data out, and now they're gonna use ransomware as their exit strategy.
Right.
They can try to monetize the data. They can also try to monetize the ransomware scenario as well. And ultimately, I think from the attacker's perspective, it probably is a pretty good exit strategy. If
Yeah.
you think about how do we respond to something like this, usually step one in your immediate reaction is thinking, how do we recover from the ransomware?
Right.
How do we bring the business back online? How do we bring things back up? And sometimes, restoring from backups, obviously that's sometimes the pathway we want to go down. But that could also, help obfuscate some of the attackers'
Right.
moves just prior to that. So I think it's a great exit strategy, and it's unfortunately a bit of a scary thing for us as well.
Yeah, for sure. So let's break that down and kind of look at it step by step. So we know a couple different facts about it. We know a little bit of details about how this, ransomware operates. And so if we kind of back up and go through the steps of the attack, one of the things that the ransomware does is it'll try and run, I think, task kill and some other like the net stop to stop some like database processes and things like that, which typically require elevated or admin rights on those systems. So if we kind of go back, we're not sure, I don't think at this point, how they got in. We've seen so many different ways that they can get in. So if it was a booby-trapped email or something like that, or an exploit, but let's tackle that first part first. So getting those elevated rights once you've established that foothold. What are some of the ways that you've seen in investigations people do that, or other tips that we've seen attackers do in the past with other attacks?
Sure. I mean, anytime that you log into a system, you're leaving credential footprint behind.
Yeah.
So when we have admins logging into different systems, when we have service accounts being used interactively, a lot of times these service accounts might have elevated privileges to some extent. All we really need to do is log into a machine that an attacker is compromised. And it's fairly straightforward for them to start to get their hands on these credentials. They can get tickets that are left behind, which they can, of course, take offline and try to crack password hashes, or even just using password hashes, and especially in some legacy environments.
Yeah.
So it's fairly simple to find these credentials. It's
Right.
just a matter of getting to the right ones to get the right privileges. And unfortunately, we're finding that that's really not that hard either.
Right.
A lot of times we're running into organizations that have service accounts for legacy apps that are no longer used, that still have elevated rates that nobody's looking at because nobody's
Right.
using the app anymore. But from a security perspective, this is just some basic AD hygiene stuff that unfortunately comes back to bite us later on.
Yeah. So just for the audience, and Ryan, keep me honest here. So one of the things they look for is SPNs with admin rights. Is that one of the things that they would typically look for if they were going to attack one of these elevated service accounts?
Yeah, well, I mean, SPNs are very normal things in
Right.
every environment. We're going to see them all the time. So, it's normal to have that, but it also, makes the account inherently very visible.
Mm-hmm.
So, normal domain users can query for those accounts really easily using even just a little bit of living off the land, PowerShell.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to identify those accounts, allows us to get to their, their services, their TGSs, which contain their password hashes, which then we can take offline and try to crack as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, finding the combination of an SPN, valued account, like a service principal name service account, and an account having elevated rights, that's kind of like the perfect storm from the attacker's perspective.
Right.
And unfortunately, we see it all the time.
Yeah, so that's a great, I think, takeaway for the audience too. That's maybe something to check out in your environment if you have something like that. The other thing that I wanted to also bring up is, of course, they stole source code and they have some screenshots that seem like it is definitely real. So a couple different things the attackers would have to do is once they've established that foothold, they'd have to map out the network, find out where the juicy information might live, look for the information, and then kind of exfiltrate it after that. So there's a lot of steps in that process. Ryan, could you walk us through maybe the first one? So I've established my foothold. Maybe I've gotten an elevated account. What would be the next sort of thing that I would do if I were the attacker in this situation to find out what's out there in the environment?
Continue to do some recon. I would probably want to, this is a pretty continuous process as you're moving laterally to different machines, trying to identify what else is live around you.
Right.
Maybe using some, DNS reverse lookups to try to find other hosts that might be out there too. See if you can get to something that may contain some sort of data, because ultimately that's usually what they're there for. And then also, you can use things like PowerShell string searches to, find data that might be relevant at the same time. And it does it pretty quickly. It does it at scale very, very quickly.
So that's again a couple other points to keep a look at is monitoring kind of what's going on and for those DNS reverse lookups, and then of course monitoring the data itself. And wherever it happens to live, making sure that when, when and how and who is accessing it, of course, to spot some of these signs. Now, the actual ransomware itself, let's cover that very quickly, too. Once they've found the data, they've exfiltrated it. Actually, let me ask you that first. So the exfiltration phase, before they detonate the ransomware, what are some ways that organizations can try and detect that, or what are some ways that attackers you've seen get the data out of the organization?
Kilian, there are so many different ways they can get data outside the network, unfortunately. And they go from the very sophisticated side to, very, very simple as well, unfortunately. Sophisticated being things potentially like DNS tunneling, where you might be, sending bits of data out through DNS requests. More middle of the road, but definitely on the simpler side, even things just like anonymous upload sites. And unfortunately, a lot of these sites have APIs that you can use, which make them really, really easy and really scary for us as well. And then even just really simple things like shared links. How often are we creating a shared link in Office 365? We just create a publicly accessible shared link. It's really easy to send data out that way too.
Yeah, so it sounds like, again, I know we talked about it on other streams together, but being a defender is tough. We have all of these different points that we need to monitor and control. We need to be right every single time, but the attackers only need to get it right really one time if they can go undetected, right? And then the last part is, and you mentioned it too, is ransomware is often used as a cover in a lot of these situations here. I believe this particular one used a fairly well-known file extension. I think it was .crypt, something like that. I know a couple of the other ones have used it. But what are some of the ways, aside from just the standard extension, people could detect ransomware-like activity and hopefully stop it before it wipes everything out?
You definitely have a lot of your standard signature-based detections, looking for specific extensions, file names, hashes, things like that.
Sure.
One of the things that we've had pretty good success with on our side is using more behavioral-focused tactics.
Right.
So looking at specific patterns of behavior, thresholds of certain types of actions happening within certain periods of time. Looking for this happening at scale. It's one thing to see a whole bunch of actions being generated in one folder by one user. That could just be a copy. But if we see this happening across multiple paths with a specific pattern, something a little bit more sophisticated, that tends to be a little bit more interesting to look at. So I think it's important to make sure that we have coverage on all ends of the spectrum.
Right.
From, the signature-based detections to more of the behavioral methods as well.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like each one of these individual pieces would be kind of odd and unusual. And I know you do investigations all the time, kind of digging through this type of stuff. But if you were brought in, like at this point, or the ransomware alert went off, typically, just really quick for the audience, what would the process be for you to do this investigation? So that a ransomware popped off, let's say best case scenario, we had something on there to stop it, so our alert went off and we had a script to shut down the machine. How would you backtrack through this investigation to kind of pinpoint the infiltration or the root cause of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously first we want to make sure that we're moving into containment at that
Right.
point. And I guess shameless plug, hopefully I have Varonis at this point. But I'd want to start looking at the activity. I want to understand which users are impacted. I want to understand which devices they've been on during that time frame, start to establish a timeline where this is happening as well.
Right.
And really start to, I think we've talked about this before, build out kind of that spider web of the investigation of users and devices while it fits into the broader timeline. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully we're not doing too many of those, but hopefully we also have the right systems in place at the same time.
Absolutely. And again, shameless plug here too, Ryan, like I said, you're an expert on this. Your team that you have are experts on doing these types of investigations and more. If somebody out there watching thinks they might have been hit with ransomware or had some other type of cyber attack, and they're Varonis customers or prospects or something like that, how would they get involved with your team to help them through that process?
Yeah, I mean, just give us a shout. You can always just reach out to any of the Varonis addresses, the marketing team. We have a couple different areas that we can send emails to, and just say that you need help. It'll get routed to us. We'll get a session going. If you are an existing Varonis customer or trialing one of the Varonis products, you can always work through your account team or the support channels as well, and then they'll get it to us as well. So we're here to help at the end of the day, and just give us a shout if you need any.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate that, Ryan. And thank you all for watching. I know these are scary times that we're living in. The cyber threats just keep increasing, it seems like, in severity and velocity, and they're hitting us from multiple ways. So, having your team available, Ryan, is a huge, I think, relief to a lot of people. We've got a lot of great feedback from our customers as you go through this. So we really appreciate that. And for everybody out there, thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions, we'll put a link to the help description or the help page in the description below if you want to reach out to us. Ryan, anything else you want to add before we sign off today?
Yeah, Kilian, it's been great. Our first live session, I think it went pretty well.
Sure.
But yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much, and we're looking forward to having this, every week. Again, Thursday mornings on the Eastern time, we'll start to schedule these more regularly. So thank you, Ryan, for joining us. Thank you all for watching. We'll put a link to some of the information about the CD Projekt Red information in the description below, a couple articles, and then also, as I mentioned, the link to the Varonis help if you want to reach out to us. So thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this, if you like this content, please consider subscribing to the channel. We would love that. We'd love to see our numbers go up if we're meeting your needs. And if you did find it enjoyable, maybe throw us a like or a comment. We love reading those as well too. So thank you all again for watching. We're looking forward to seeing you again live soon. Thanks, Ryan. Take care.
Thanks, Kilian.